Here on the edge of Tingan-Ninong, close to the border town of Myawaddy, fighters from the Pro-Democracy People's Defence Force move into defensive positions, ready to engage with soldiers from the State Administration Council, or SAC, as the junta calls itself. The road, a vital artery, linking the Thai border to Yangon, Myanmar's commercial hub, and going on to the border with India. This is the Asian highway between Kokorek and Myawaddy, an area that the SAC have been pushed out of, but it's still not completely under control of the pro-democracy forces, and there are fighter jets in the air, so they're being very careful about exposing themselves here. The town leveled by bombs and artillery strikes from the junta, barely a single structure untouched. Civilians long gone. Their cattle roam freely in the streets. But even they know not to go too far. Beyond the barrier, towards Thailand, is no man's land. The battle for the town of Myawaddy has been one of the fiercest of Myanmar's civil war. At stake, who controls access to the heart of the country?
It's a gateway between Thailand and Myanmar. And I believe that all the goods, from detergent to oil and things like that, come from Thailand through Myawaddy into Burma proper, or the heartland of Myanmar.
On one side, fighters of the People's Defence Force, or PDF, young and idealistic, driven to turn back the military coup of 2021. Fighting under the leadership of the Karen, an ethnic army that's been locked in combat with Myanmar's military for decades. On the other, the full force of the nation's military might. Armour, artillery and air power. Led by General Min Aung Hlaing, who critics say wants nothing less than absolute power. But the border town has a dark secret. Cities built in the jungle, out of reach of law enforcement and surveillance. Centres for illegal gambling and cybercrime, generating billions of dollars a year.
What's taking place in Myawaddy certainly indicates that it represents one of the largest crime hubs in the world.
It's early April. Thai military vehicles gather at the border crossing into Myanmar, Friendship Bridge number 2. From the other side, the sound of airstrikes as Thai soldiers wait. Thousands of refugees flee across the border into the Thai town of Mesot. On the other side of the bridge, the remaining soldiers of Battalion 275, the last stronghold of Myanmar's military. On the outskirts of Myawaddy, charred ruins. Fighters from an ethnic Karen army take control of the abandoned military base. The town of Myawaddy itself is almost deserted. The residents have either fled or are hiding. But a new militia has appeared on the streets, the Border Guard Force, or BGF.
Border Guard Force was crucial here, because once it turned this way, one way, which means turn against the SAC, then Myawaddy was taken. But then when the BGF turned the other way, then some of the SAC soldiers were able to retake some of their areas back.
But the State Administration Council, as the military junta calls itself, clearly doesn't trust the BGF. Airstrikes hold the rebels back. Day and night, bombers pound Myawaddy, explosions echoing across the border. And then on the 23rd of April, an SAC soldier raising the national flag at Battalion 275. The junta's forces have returned. Further along the Asian highway, however, the junta's troops are faring less well. Units of rebel fighters intercept a relief column of soldiers heading for Myawaddy. The armoured vehicles are easily ambushed as they move through the mountain passes. But there's little the rebels can do about the SAC's aerial power. Jet fighters and attack helicopters are in the air, searching for targets. They captured some anti-aircraft assets, but that does little to repel the attacks. And 24 hours a day, there's a constant buzz in the sky. That's what the fighters say is a Y-12. It's a spotter plane that's up there looking for targets for artillery, but also capable of dropping barrel bombs. The fighters know to stay out of sight, slipping seamlessly under the cover of the trees and shrubs. The thud of explosions in the distance. But their commander doesn't fear the junta's weapons. Disunity between his fighters and the ethnic armies they fight with is the real concern. He's disappointed to lose Miyawadi, but he knows they can hit the military junta where it feels safest. The People's Defence Force he commands are the backbone of the resistance movement. In the aftermath of the military coup in 2021, peaceful protesters took to the streets. The urban youth unwilling to give up the freedoms of democracy. The military crackdown that followed was ruthless. Hundreds gunned down in the streets, thousands more hauled away to detention. The protesters were left with a stark choice: submit or move to the borders and fight. The will to fight is one thing, the means to do so quite another. Until 6 months ago, the PDF only had one rifle for every 2 fighters and very limited ammunition. Battlefield successes have turned that around. One of the things that's made a huge difference in the last 6 months is weapons the pro-democracy forces have seized from military bases they've overrun. These are just some of the rifles they've taken from bases in the last couple of weeks. The youthful innovation of the PDF fighters has also given them an edge. With weapons in short supply, software engineers programmed 3D printers to produce rifles from workshops hidden deep in the jungle. Inspired by Ukraine's efforts against Russia, they've challenged the junta in the skies too. Consumer drones, repurposed and reprogrammed to deliver mortar shells. Unlike in Ukraine, however, these fighters have no international support. Their funding is self-generated, raised from donations through social media campaigns. Toji was a finalist on The Voice Myanmar. A life of stardom and celebrity was interrupted by the military coup. Now he tours rebel bases, raising morale and funds.
ကျွန်တော်တို့ဘက်ကလည်းကျွန်တော်တို့ဘက်ကပြည်သူတွေကတက်နိုင်တဲ့နည်းနဲ့ပေါ့နော်ဥပမာတခြားငွေကြေးတက်နိုင်တဲ့သူဆိုလည်းငွေကြေးတက်နိုင်တဲ့သူတွေအနေနဲ့လည်း social platform တွေပေါ်မှာကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီ entertainment ကနေပြီးတော့ရမယ်တခြားအကျိုးကျေးဇူးတွေအပြင်ဒီငွေကြေးကဏ္ဍတွေအစားဒီ social ဘောကနေပြီးတော့နောက်ပိုင်းမှာကျွန်တော်တို့ internet ပေါ်ကနေပြီးတော့ money ရှာဖွေနည်းတွေအစားကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီ fundraising ကိစ္စတွေဒီ campaign ကိစ္စတွေပါဝင်နေပါတယ်
The song he's singing, originally performed by Zaya Tor, politician and rapper, executed by the military junta in 2022. It's a rare moment of peace and harmony. As the sun sets, fighters slip out of cover to wash in the river. Educated urban professionals, now jungle guerrillas. But the reality of their war is never far away. The White Tiger column is on the front line around Miyawadi, involved in some of the fiercest battles. 3 fighters recently killed by SAC drones as the military tried to get back into the town. It's a harsh reality of their war, but it's hardened their resolve.
ကျွန်တော်တို့ရဲဘော်ရဲဘက်ညီကိုတွေစုံရှုံးသွားအတွက်ရန်တော့ဝမ်းနေမိပါဘောနော်ဒါပေမဲ့ကျွန်တော်တို့တော်လန်ရေးမှာဒီလိုပေးစမ်းမယ်ဆိုတော့ကျွန်တော်တို့တူပြီးတော့တွေးထားပြီးသားပေါ့နော်
And there's no shortage of eager recruits. Charging out from cover, this is the next line of attack. Fighters in training. For the moment, their rifles are made of wood. But they've already made up their minds to use the real thing when it comes to it.
If I have to, yeah, I'm prepared to kill. My main target is like to become a military doctor, but if I have to, so I think I will do that.
If I choose to kill the people, that's not because of the hate of the soldier. So I focus. I need to protect my family and my people.
The training grounds close to their jungle camp. They have to be careful of SAC spotter planes in the air. A drill instructor barks commands in the baking heat. Discipline is everything. These are engineers, office workers and students, not used to following strict orders. These are the skills that will save their lives in combat. And no allowances are made for the female recruits. Before a hard-earned meal, the Pledge of Allegiance to the People's Defence Force.
Since the new conscription laws came into force, thousands of young men and women have come down into the jungles to join the pro-democracy forces. They'd rather fight against the military junta than join their ranks.
The trainers say they've been swamped with requests to sign up, despite what awaits the recruits. 3 months of hard physical training and basic military tactics. Their strongest recruitment tool, the new draft.
ဒီအတွက်ကြောင့်ကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီတစ်ဖက်မှာလည်းတော်လိုင်းသမားတွေကပို့ပြီးတော့အားကောင်းလာတယ်ပေါ့။ဘာကြောင့်လဲဆိုရင်သူတို့အာဓမပြဋ္ဌာန်းလိုက်တဲ့အာဓမကြီးညာလိုက်တဲ့ဒီကြီးညာချက်ကိုဘယ်လူလူတရက်လုံးမှာလက်မခံနိုင်ဘူး။လက်မခံနိုင်တဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်ဒီအရွယ်ကောင်းသားသမီးတွေခေတ်ပညာတတ်သားသမီးတွေကအကုန်လုံးကဒီကျွန်တော်တို့သူတို့ရက်တိချက်မုံမြတ်တဲ့ရက်တိချက်မှန်တဲ့လူလူဘက်ကပဲရက်တိပြီးတော့ကျွန်တော်တို့ရဲ့ဒီပြည်သူ့ကာကွယ်ရေးတပ် PDF တပ်တော်ထဲကိုပဲအားလုံးကဝင်လာကြပါတယ်
The resistance taking more and more territory, they're winning the ground war, and the SAC has to resort to the air war, air power, to forestall, to buy time, and really to hold out.
The resistance now controls much of the countryside around Miyawadi. Mountain paths widen to accommodate troop movement and supply routes, often hidden under the jungle canopy.
Moving around this part of Myanmar is very complicated. Lots of steep mountain passes, wide rivers to cross, and the only way to get there is on rickety rafts like this.
For fighters trained and prepared, this is not a problem. For local people, it's a nightmare. Supply routes that provide essentials like food and fuel have been cut. The United Nations says 13 million people can't get enough to eat. Across the country, 3 million people forced out of their homes. In many places close to the front line, residents flee. Most of the people who've been displaced have nowhere to go. With no humanitarian aid, there aren't many camps. And anywhere the military see people gathering, they bomb. Dono Po fled her home near Kokorek with her daughters and grandchildren. They know from experience what life under military rule is like. It's particularly hard for children. Constantly moving, traumatized by the sounds and sights of war. A lost generation with no schools or homes. Hidden deep up a jungle pass, nestled amongst the trees, Dr. Ong treats a young fighter with a shrapnel injury. He winces in pain as his wound is cleaned and stitched. Dr. Ong used to work at the military academy, but he fled after the coup.
Road level တော့ဒီမှာဆိုကျွန်တော်တို့ minor surgical kit တွေလုပ်လို့ရမယ်တာမန်ဖျားနာတွေကိုကုသလို့ရမယ်ပြီးတော့ရင်ငှက်ဖျားကုသလို့ရမယ်နောက်တစ်ခုကကြတော့လိုအပ်ရင်ကျွန်တော်ဓာတ်မှန်အထောက်ဆောင်ရိုက်ပြီးတော့
Sometimes they even have to do amputations here, and with the thud that we can hear of airstrikes and artillery in the distance, a reminder they can be interrupted at any time. Suddenly a small truck arrives. In the back, Marpan A, in labour and moaning in pain. They hurry her into the surgery. She and her family are displaced from their home. It took them 7 hours to get to the clinic. They put her on a drip, but there's only so much Dr. Ong can do. He's worried the long journey may have harmed the expecting mother and the baby inside. Very quickly, the child is born, a boy. But it's not breathing. Its skin is turning purple. The doctor quickly gets to work as vital seconds tick away. No incubator or intensive care unit here. And then the sound everyone's been hoping to hear. Smiles and relief for the family and the medical staff. A new arrival in a very uncertain world.
Under the SAC, there's no rule of law, and it became lawless countries, not only in the border region, but also in the big cities like Rangoon or Mandalay. Myanmar, not a failed state now, but if SAC control Myanmar, definitely Myanmar will become the failed state.
And that chaos could spill over the border.
Under the SAC, Myanmar became the threat to the region.
Myanmar's been flooding Southeast Asia with illegal drugs since the coup in 2021. It's now the largest producer of methamphetamine in the world. Here, enough meth pills for every man, woman and child in Thailand. We'd seen for ourselves what damage that's doing inside the country. In this nightclub in Yangon, partygoers openly passed out ecstasy pills. Lines of white powder, ketamine, cut on the table in full view. Nobody hides, nobody cares. Illegal drugs are everywhere in Myanmar now. As this user, whose identity we've hidden, told me.
ကာလမှာတော့ဒီလိုမျိုး item တွေရဖို့တော့ကအရန်ဟိုဒီလိုခက်ခဲတုံတုံနဲ့အဲ့လိုမျိုးသုံးကြရမျိုးမရှိဘူးပေါ့နော် club တွေပါတွေသွားလို့ရှိရင်ဒီဟိုက alcohol တွေပါတွေပဲတောက်ကြရဆိုတော့အခုဒီအနာသိမိနောက်ပိုင်းမှာကျတော့ဒီ item တွေကအလွယ်တကူနဲ့ရနေရယ်
But a new threat has opened up in the vacuum of control.
I think Myanmar is a really special case here. I was once in Karen State, and that's exactly what I saw. When you go a little bit further, you find KNLA post here, and 2 kilometers away you find BGF post, and then you find SAC post.
Different ethnic Karen groups, the Karen National Liberation Army, the Democratic Karen Buddhist Army, and the Border Guard Force, or BGF. The BGF's commander, Chiptu, is a flamboyant soldier and entrepreneur. Sanctioned by the UK government for human trafficking and torture, he's believed to have made millions of dollars from deals with Chinese companies that set up in his territory. During the pandemic, construction started on what was said to be a casino complex. Now, it's one of the largest crime hubs in the world.
This is Shui Koko, a city that was built by Chinese investors with the dream of becoming a digital hub. What it now seems to be is a center for illegal gambling and cyber scams, generating, according to the United Nations, billions of dollars a year in illegal revenue.
As darkness falls, the city lights up. All the facilities of modern life, electricity, clean streets, digital connectivity, not present anywhere else in Karen State, but in abundance here.
The BGF were initially one of the first touch points with organized crime groups looking to set up their bases of operations in and around Miyawadi, specifically places like Shui Koko or elsewhere along that border.
High-tech crime has thrived in Myanmar since the coup. Online gambling, money laundering, internet-based crypto and romance scams. We'd met one of the victims from Laogai in northern Shan State.
ทักหาลูกค้าเพื่อแบบจีบลูกค้าอะไรอย่างเงี้ยใช่ให้ลูกค้าใช่รักชอบแล้วก็ให้มาลงทุนอะไร
If they didn't perform, they were beaten mercilessly.
แต่ว่าถ้าเราไม่ทำใช่ไหมพี่เราก็จะโดนลงโทษโดนตีโดนทุบโดนช็อตไฟฟ้าเลยเอาไปขังใช่มันเป็นสิ่งที่เราหลีกเลี่ยงไม่ได้พี่ที่จะต้องทำ
Resistance groups overran Laogai in November last year. The bosses rounded up and sent to China to await trial.
They basically scammed too.
Just a few kilometers from Shui Koko, we met a man who'd worked for one of the illegal companies there. He spoke to us on the condition of anonymity. We know that most of the scam centers in Laogai closed in November last year. Where did they move to?
They moved to Shikoku.
Do you have any idea how much money the company was making?
Only in my company there's a 50 floor, and each floor have 4 groups of people, and each group have to scam for about 150,000 USD for each month. Just like their hobby.
$9 million a month, more than 100 million a year. Interpol estimates scams like this generate as much as $3 trillion a year in Southeast Asia. That's the equivalent to the gross domestic product of France. With artificial intelligence, it's only going to get worse.
This means the integration of malware into their cyber fraud schemes, the growing integration of things like generative artificial intelligence and deepfake frauds, which really open Pandora's box to the types of possibilities that are possible within these new business lines.
Profits that dwarf legitimate border trade, and an environment protected from law enforcement or harassment. It's no surprise to many that the BGF handed back Miyawadi to the military junta.
Because they got a lot of profit from this. The scamming won't never stop.
A delicate power balance now in Miyawadi, a token presence from the military junta, soldiers protected by the border guard force in the town, and most of the surrounding countryside now under the control of the Karen Ethnic Army and the PDF. But Myanmar's civil war is fragmenting an already fragile nation. In the gaps, a cancer is starting to grow that has global implications.
No one wants to see a disintegrated, balkanized Myanmar that becomes like a cesspool of drugs and illicit crimes and all kinds of trafficking and so on.
Miyawadi is just one town, but it echoes what's happening elsewhere. Shan State, Kaya, Kachin and Rakhine. The power politics of guns, generals and gamblers.